go out and live it.
That's a thought you obviously had when you were sitting in prison, doing
Absolutely.
Melbourne. But in the early days, though, you were doing the fitness drills with the Rabbitohs. You were copying them and mimicking them down at Redfern Oval. Is that correct during their training? And
Literally.
there were signs that you really had that discipline and commitment to do good things. And so I think it was likely, and you'll probably go more into detail on this, but it was likely more so the people you're around, the environment you're around, and less so the innate Jeffrey Morgan that existed inside,
Mm.
and I guess the drive and passion that you had in your soul to play football and do positive things. But I guess when you get swept up in what's the norm, I guess within that where you were at the time, kind of makes it hard, doesn't it, for your growth and development?
It's a great question because my father taught me so much. I ran away at 12 years of age, so people get context to this.
Yeah,
My father was filled with discipline. So to be able to do that as a young kid, what he'd do is left foot kick, right foot kick, 100 on each side. Then let's say there was a bunch of monkey bars. I'll never forget them. There was 9 holes within those, or 9 squares, I should say. And the idea was to hit each of those squares 10 times with your right foot, left foot before I could go home. And I'm talking sometimes it'd be dark and my dad would just be like, keep going, keep going. So he taught me discipline, perseverance, commitment, like these values that even when I ran away at 12 was still present. And then to give you context to, yeah, and then I'd go across, and obviously those would be at those training drills. I'd look at them, okay, and there was a hill at Redfern Oval on the side of the training ground, and you could walk in the oval at that time. No one would stop you. Reggie the Rabbit would be there, and whatever they did on the field, I did on the hill, and I'd run up the hill and do it. And trainers at the time would come over and say, "Mate, you know, we love what you're doing. Keep doing it, mate." And because who couldn't? You're on the hill doing exactly what they're doing, but in your own version, probably a shorter version than they were running. But I was doing the same thing, up, back, that sort of stuff. That discipline came from my father. But what ended up happening as well is when I ran away, I got all the habits and rituals of the toxicity being in a homeless environment.
yeah.
Now we're in survival mode. I'm thinking about roof, water, shelter, shelter, warm clothes, food, and
Less about
water.
like self-actualization, more so about those basic needs. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and then I became a product of that as well. So you sort of merge those two, and I became later on to where I am today, and it's magical. But back then, you can see why I was so disciplined and so structured from what my father taught me during those formative years. It carried on when I finally came out of destruction and dysfunction into construction, and for me that was the realization that if you can learn something for a period of time, no matter where you go, whether I was in jail, I was still doing push-ups every day. I was still making my bed in jail, and people are like, "Mom, what? There's no one watching, brother. Why you make your bed?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's a discipline, brother. And that discipline, we spoke about that before, rolled into other stuff. And I just had to realize, relationship wise, I wasn't built well. And it was more about, I had the discipline to show up to the relationship and be nice every day. But underlying, I didn't feel valued by my parents at the time because they before asked me who I wanted to live with at 10 years of age on Redfern Street, Redfern. I didn't feel they loved me, cared for me, valued me. So I was seeking constant validation. And I didn't understand that. I thought discipline was discipline. But in that relationship, I wanted to be validated. So if a girl texts me, oh, yeah, sweet, let's meet up. And I started to cheat on my partner. I was destructive in that sense. And when I finally had the deep dive, why is this? Yeah, and I had the deep dive was when I did it a few times and I sat there crying in my car about the partner that had just left me and oh they treated me shit and I blamed all of them and they might have done shit things to me, right? They might have treated me, and they did. There was, like, looking back on it, there was a lot of things that they did and didn't treat me well. Doesn't justify me cheating. And how I could remember that Spencer conversation. How could I just build myself better and what could I do to show up to that relationship? And finally I started to work on, I don't need to be validated by another girl. I've been in this relationship 4 years and I get the same messages, I get pictures, I get addresses, and mate, I just move on because when you know who you are I don't need the validation from anybody else. When you have a partner that you're committed to, truly committed to, and you know what the word commitment actually means, and those sorts of conversations. Remember, I spoke about building yourself well. I don't have time for anybody else but what I've given my time, energy, and effort to, and that's to my partner, my beautiful partner, Sal. And I'll continue to do that. And that's where we'll fall off the wagon because we just don't have that skill set. I didn't see it with my parents, and there was violence in amongst that. There was, my dad was, there's various other women at home, and when you get older, you realize, shit, wait a second, he was bringing women home while he's with my mum. That doesn't make sense to me, and no doubt, I just saw that as normal behaviour. But now, 4 years in, respectful to my partner, I can still have conversations to females and say, good work, keep going, all of the above, but not with the expectation of, what's your address, I'm coming past, or vice versa. And that's just a beautiful journey, brother.
It seems like there was a lot of self progression, which was even within you from the start, as I said, about with regards to the training at Redfern Oval. Also, when you were doing a lot of your bank robberies, you talk about how, when you're out and about on the go, you did eat a lot of McDonald's fast food.
Oh, absolutely.
But you were really conscious about your nutrition and healthy eating, and you eventually in prison went on to do some further education. So you did a Bachelor of Nutrition, I think was the name of the degree. Um,
Started as health promotion because nutrition science was very hard to do. Sorry, okay, but and then transitioning.
but then you went to making your bed in prison. So there's really these really good attributes about you, which helped you almost get to top level, top grade in the Rabbitohs squad. Do you think that rugby league was a really positive form of escapism for you? And once that was kind of taken away from you, and you were talking about how you're much more focused on fulfilling those innate human needs like water, shelter, food, that kind of thing, you lost that form of escapism, which really came down on you like a ton of bricks when you were kind of faced with the realities of life and what it was going to be like for you as a youngster?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like rugby league was, I never gave it the time that it. If I did, I believe I would have went somewhere with it. I gave it minimal time. I gave it. I showed up to training always. I trained very hard when I was there, but I didn't even try, and I was able to get in that space of becoming an NRL player. And I think, and it just shows you if you really dedicate your time to it and put some whatever you go all in on. Um, I just knew that it's funny, I knew that I wasn't being true to myself in that space. Mate, I'd go out committing crimes all night and then show up to training the next day and then stay up all night and go, sleep in the day, go straight to training at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever time it was at that point in time. And I just walked out of training one day and never looked back and didn't have, look, I wouldn't say I didn't have regret. You always think what could have been, but I'm not going to beat myself up on what didn't, but I know that if I don't think it was, I gave it enough time to go into that escapism, I suppose, in that sense. I think it was just um, a fleeting potential escape out of the life that I was in. It was huge, and in Redfern, you see a lot of the kids go through that journey and hope that they make South and it gets them out of, the badge of honour of going to jail and just being a normal process of that's who we are as Aboriginal people or people growing up in poor socio-economic areas, Campbelltown, Liverpool, Miller, all these areas that are Redfern, Waterloo, Woolloomooloo, where they're saying, oh, we can't amount to anything. Biggest thing is because we've been around that proximity to, that's what we become. And I had to break that cycle, and to do that, it was one of the hardest journeys. And football gave me a moment of it, but I think I wasn't built good enough. Same thing, boxing. Jeff Fennick was champion at the time. We hung out at Newtown. Johnny Lewis was training Jeff, Peter Matreski. But as young kids, I don't know, we just didn't feel like we were valued. Like, probably had the value on ourselves, to be honest. So I can't walk in there and speak to Johnny. He's famous. Jeff's famous. But knowing Jeff as a good friend now, and training his wife, his daughter, and his daughters, crazily enough, I look back on it and we overthink everything in life, paralysis analysis. I'm not going to walk in there, Jeff's famous for you. Mate, bloke would have spoken to me, but my thoughts stopped me from even walking through the door. And who knows? Maybe I was a world champion boxer if I'd walked through that door. We just don't know. And it's those lessons in this conversation should be follow your dreams. Just walk in that door and tackle that. Like now, I've been able to harness that and say instead of having fear or anxiety, I've got excitement. I'm blessed and grateful by this opportunity. For me, as an Aboriginal person, I Adelaide and say my ancestors fought for me to be here and have conversations of strength for myself, but also for our culture. Um, and changing your language to change the outcome means that your perception on it now isn't fear or anxiety. It's an opportunity. I'm going to elevate my life. I'm going to find happiness, inner peace, or whatever it is that you're doing. And when you shift that language, change your language, you change the outcome. And I can't tell you how powerful that is. Find the right words to step into something rather than away from something. Because as you said, there's so much escapism in my life I was constantly running from without me even realizing. And a lot of society does the same thing. As I said before, 20 years in jail and all those experiences, you think that's crazy. The craziest thing is you're free and you're escaping from your own life. Most people are dead at 25, buried at 75. And when we understand that transition of conversation means that you're just never going to take that opportunity because it's fear and anxiety. Step past that and step into the greatest version of yourself. You never know what will happen.
I've heard that quote on Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom. They just said that. I think it was who was it? Alex Hormozy, I think.
Yeah,
He said that. It was really insightful too, and I think it's very true.
crazy.
Very
Uh,
true. Very true.
when I heard it, it
Very
blew
true.
me away. It's just, and the first step to that, just so everybody knows, is to identify what you've stepped away from,
Yeah.
and then the second step would be how do you change that? So write out the conversation. Oh, this it's scary to start a business. I've got so much fear. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And then write I call it the yin and yang. Write the yang or the yin, whatever way you want to look at it. There is a positive and negative aspect of that. But in general, write it out and say, for me, it would be a great opportunity. What would it give you? How would you feel? Oh, I can take my kids to Disneyland. I can feel inner peace. I can be fulfilled, or whatever it is that you'll get out of it, tangible, intangible, how you feel something, or something you can never measure or feel. Write that out and say, far out, I'd love to live in that version. But what's stopping me is that fear and anxiety. But writing this out, uh, the opportunities, the happiness, this, and then start to step into it. If you don't know the first step around that journey, then that's where you've got your answer. I need a coach, a guide, a mentor, someone who can put me in that position. That's an investment, not a cost. Know the difference between both. Someone's going to level up your life, open your door in 3 seconds and ask for 300. And you go, that took you 2 seconds. Why am I paying you 300? It was the acquirement of that knowledge that allowed him to or her to do that in that short space of time that you then say, it's not worth the stress. I'll pay you the $300. Be that for yourself every single day and watch how magical life becomes.